Our implicit biases are the unconscious and automatic reactions that happen in us to save us reaction time. This is crucial because we receive 11 million pieces of information every second, and there is no way we could consciously process all of it. As a result, a lot of reactions that we have become unconscious. We don't think about the steps we're taking when we're walking. We automatically smile and say good morning to a coworker when they pass us. Many of our everyday reactions are unconscious. And these unconscious reactions, when it comes to bias, is based on the experiences we've had throughout our lives. Let's do a quick game. Shout out the first word that comes to your mind when you see the image. What does this mean? What does this mean? What is this person doing? Your answers to these images were automatic. You didn't have to think to answer. Instead, your unconscious brain provided you with the answer, and you were able to respond immediately. Our implicit biases supply us with lots of information every moment. As you saw, this doesn't have to be a negative thing, but it can be, especially when applied to people. People are unique individuals with unique experiences. When we apply broad biases to people, it can lead to negative consequences. Let's look at an example of this. Listen to this story and try to pinpoint the implicit biases you see show up. Brian is a successful physician who enjoys relating to his patients. He always tries to find something he and his patients have in common, so his patients feel more comfortable speaking with him. He knows the white coat he wears can be intimidating for some people. Marcus is a new patient of Brian and comes in because he has an infection. Brian begins asking Marcus some basic things about himself and finds out they both went to Harvard for their undergraduate degree. They bond over this similarity. At the end of the visit, he prescribes Marcus some antibiotics for his infection and sends him to the pharmacy. As Marcus is leaving the building, Brian realizes he forgot to tell Marcus to stop taking his current medication for hypertension while taking the antibiotics. He decides not to have him or his staff call him because he would expect a Harvard man to have the common sense not to take both medications at one time. If the patient were anyone else other than Marcus, especially someone who didn't finish high school, then he would take this precaution. Unfortunately, Marcus ended up taking both medications and ended up in the emergency room. Can you think of any implicit biases Brian held that affected his visit with Marcus? One of them is the idea of common sense. What Brian may believe to be common sense could not be what someone else believes is common sense. This miscommunication in ideas can be especially harmful in healthcare. Another bias of Brian's is his assumptions about people with higher educational backgrounds. In this case, both of these unconscious biases Brian held, his implicit bias, led to harmful effects for one of his patients. This is why it is important to understand what implicit biases are, how they work, and how to address them. The easiest way to address implicit biases when it comes to people is to treat everyone as a unique individual and communicate with them to understand their required level of care instead of making assumptions based on their background.